Today on Ask the Trainer, we have a question from Lubbock, Texas, and Don asks, can we only search and assign zones from the controller? My employee added a bycoder out in the field, and it would be great if I didn't have to make a trip out to the site to assign it. Good news, Don. You don't have to go out to the controller if you're connected to Base Manager. So you can search and assign at the controller. It works really well if it's a standalone and not connected to Base Manager, or if you happen to be there when you're doing the installation, or you can do it through Base Manager. So let's take a look at doing it through the controller real briefly. On the controller, the first thing we're going to do is turn it to the assign position. So rotate the dial to assign. Now you can see we have all the different devices we can search and assign for. We have zones, master valves, pump start, soil moisture sensors, all those different things. So we're going to start with zones. So we'll hit enter to open up the zones. And as long as this search column is highlighted right here, we're just going to hit search. And as soon as I press enter, what it's going to do is check the two-wire path or the R board for any devices that have not been assigned. So that's what it's doing right now. Okay, and once we've done that search and assign, we can come over on this next column and we can scroll and find them. Everything's assigned here. But if we move through the plus and minus, we will find the devices that are not assigned. So to assign a device, we'll take this VA0001, and I'm going to assign it to zone 14 because zone 14 is missing. Got those two highlighted, hit enter, and it's going to move that VA0001 from the left column and into the right column. So that's the way we search and assign at the controller. So your question was, do you have to go out to the site? So no, you don't. In order to do that, we need to open up Base Manager. So let's share the screen and see what that looks like. So I've already got Base Manager open. So if I've logged in with my unique username and password, I'm on the maps page, so we're going to jump right to the devices tab. So here on devices, and specifically you were asking about zones. So we're going to look at the zones, but any other device might be on your system would be listed in this column. The zone details, these are already the zones that already have been assigned and named. Well, let's go in and search for them. So we can do that with the assign bycoder. And what this is doing is this pause here is it's communicating with the controller and retrieving any bycoders that are assigned or connected to the two-wire path. So now that it's done that process, we can go back in and assign devices. It's already done the search. So I'm going to scroll down to zones that we have not worked with, which is going to be there we go. Zone 57 is not assigned. So when I click on the drop-down, well, here are the devices that are not already assigned. So I can pick VA0002 and assign it to zone 57. What's great is at Base Manager, I can also rename it. So I can say zones next to the front entry and then save that. Once I save that, it's pushed out to the controller and it now will be at the controller as soon as it syncs up. So the other way we can do this is via Live View. And Live View works well if you don't have a paid Base Manager account. On this one, it's the same as standing at your controller. We're going to do this with virtual button pushes. So in this case, we'll click on the Assign tab and wait for it to open up. And now we have zones open. I can hit enter. It will open up zones. Search is highlighted, so I can hit enter and it will search the wire path. So this method works as well, and we can do the same assign process as soon as it's done searching. So there you go. You have three ways in which to search and assign. You can search and assign at the controller in the field. If you happen to be standalone, or if you happen to be there during installation, you can do it through Base Manager, which I think is absolutely the easiest, and you can do it through Live View. Three ways to do it. The second question today for Ask the Trainer comes from Jeff, and he says, I have some fuses that keep burning out. Are there better fuses I can use? So first, we're just going to pause. I'm going to ask the question, why are we blowing fuses? And I think that's always a valid question, is let's examine the root cause here. And there's several reasons, and they're all about field wiring. So let's first, a fuse defined. A fuse is a definition of a fuse is it's a weak point in a wire path that will burn up before the other devices are damaged, right? So if we have a 2-amp fuse, the wire might be rated to take 3 or 5 amps, but if it hits any more than 2 amps, it's going to burn out that weak link, and then you're supposed to remedy the problem rather than put in a bigger or better fuse, right? So that's not what we're doing. So let's talk about the field wire issue. So it could be, if you're using 2-wire, this could be a precursor to an overcurrent issue. And an overcurrent is an excessive draw of energy across that wire path. So it could be a black and a red touching. It could be a device. It could be intermittent. So you may not be having overcurrent issues, even though you're having fuse issues. It could also be an excessive draw on a conventional wire path, less likely, but it's also possible. And excessive draw of energy can be two causes, right? It could be a very high draw of energy, of amperage, and that'll cause a very quick blow. The fuse will go really quick. Or it could be a lesser amount, and it will be a slower blowing fuse. So if it's a medium or lower draw, it will take longer for that to happen. So if it instantaneously, the fuse pops as soon as you put it in there and turn it back on, it's a very high draw. And if it takes a while, if it might take a day, it's a lower draw. So let's take a look at what's inside. So for this to work, let's pop open the controller. I've got a base station 3200 here. And the fuses there's a couple of fuses here. It depends if you have a 2-wire system or a conventional wire system. So popping off this cover, on the power board, there's a slow blow fuse here, and we'll look at this in just a moment. And then hiding underneath this 2-wire board, there's another couple of fuses under here. And on the back of the board, there's also a slow blow fuse clipped right on here. Now, what's interesting on all of these, it says replacement fuse, contact support before use. The idea here is that there's a problem out in the field. Let's resolve that before you just keep replacing fuse after fuse after fuse. So here's what we might see inside the controller. We've got that same power board that would be mounted up on the side and the 2-wire board, and these clip together. So I'm going to pull these apart and see those pins where those plug together. And let's look at the power board first. So in the power board, we're going to see here's a slow blow fuse. And see if we can look at that. And we can see that sometimes you can tell if it's visibly burned. Other times you can't. Sometimes you're going to have to remove the fuse and actually to put an ohm meter on both sides of that fuse to find out if it's good. So that's the power board. Keep in mind that it will be mounted like this, and it's going to be a little bit harder to see that one. If you're running a 2-wire system, we've got this board, and to see this fuse, so we've got a spare fuse here, we need to pull off this cover. Let's do that and see the fuse or fuses inside of this one. So here you can see we have 2 fuses, and these are the fast blow fuses. And here is one right up that comes with it. So if either of these boards are blown, it would not allow power out to your 2-wire path. So that would be one of the symptoms you might see. So again, if you have a blown fuse, it's very likely an excessive draw across your 2-wire path. And then one of the troubleshooting techniques is replace the fuse, but disconnect the wire path. So it's just as if I have the way I have it set up right here. And if the fuses don't blow, then it's obviously your wire out in the field. And when you connect the wire back in, you're likely going to see that fuse blow again. Now you know where your problem lies. It's not the board, it's out in the field. So you've got these 2 fuses here. So let's take a look at what's in an R board, or if you're using conventional wire, this is what you'd be using. So we've got a few screws on this one we'll pull off. So pop off this plexiglass cover. And here you can see we've got a slow blow fuse hiding right here. So less likely that this is going to burn. It's more common that we're going to see fuses on a 2-wire system that have blown. So a couple things about fuses. These are just automotive fuses. There's nothing particularly fancy about them. If you get a right slow blow or the right fast blow, you can replace them. That's nothing magical about that. But the idea is that we want you to call about this so we can help you troubleshoot the wire path and not just keep repeating the same problem over and over and over again. So let's resolve that. Give us a call and we'll talk to support. The other thing about these fuses is you may need to use an ohm meter to test them. If you aren't sure how to use that, I've got a couple of videos that I've put in the baseline web training, but there's also some ohm meter or volt ohm meter tutorials online as well. So just Google those and those will pop right up. Since fuses indicate a problem in the wire path, it's not uncommon for myself or anyone from baseline to come out and see this fuse missing. And if this fuse has been missing, that means it's been used, right? They had a fuse blow. And then if we see a small box of replacement fuses, that means that the one or two that were in the box in the controller were not enough. They had to go buy some. As soon as we see that, we're just going to stop and say, let's look at your wire. Let's see what's going on with your wire, because it's obviously not a controller issue. It's something to do with your wiring. And there's either a miswire or some poor wire integrity that need to be resolved. Have a question for me? Click the link in the description and go to hydropoint.com/askthetrainer to submit your question.